Hello, I'm Bogomir from AirTec. Ferrari F430 shock absorbers that everyone refused to repair. We will show you how it's done. These shock absorbers were sent to us from Singapore. This is the first time we are showing exact this type of dampers. And the reason is simple. Everywhere the owner asked, he was told they cannot be repaired. But as you know, for us, such things do not exist. What makes them so interesting is that they are fully made of aluminium. And this is exactly why most workshops refuse to repair them. It's widely believed that aluminium shock absorbers cannot be opened and reassembled, especially without welding. Of course, these dampers also feature a hydraulic lift system. Here, we will show it later. It allows the front of the car to be raised, useful for ramps, uneven surfaces and curbs. The dampers themselves are manufactured by Mannesmann ZF. What is interesting is that internally they are almost identical to those used in Maserati Gran Turismo and Grand Cabrio. We are talking about identical internal components. Even the lower top mount bushing, not top mount, the lower bushing is the same with the same part number. The construction is twin tube adaptive with CDCI control. Through this cable, an internal solenoid is controlled which adjusts the damping force in real time. Now comes the interesting part. The owner looked for repair solutions in several places, but everywhere he received the same answer, that dampers cannot be repaired. The main argument? Aluminium housing and no possibility of welding. Here it is important to clarify something. The internal structure of any shock absorber is extremely fine mechanical work. Welding is only acceptable in very rare cases, and honestly, it's not a good solution, it's not correct. Not every repair is the same. At AirTec, we do not offer patch jobs. We provide real engineering solutions. In this case, we will not weld anything. We will use a mechanical closing method similar to what is used in racing shock absorbers. In fact, this is a solution that ZF themselves used in early generations. So what's the problem? The complaint is oil leakage and instability while driving. The owner is not sure whether the leak comes from the lift systems or from the damper itself. So we begin with the full diagnosis. First step, we will test the lift system on our hydraulic test bench. And the result is clear. The system is leaking heavily. Next, we place the damper on the dynometer. Now we run a dyno test and take a look at the graph. You can clearly see that the graph is not symmetrical and there is a knick on the right side. When the damper changes direction, there is a drop in pressure, followed by sudden recovery. This is like a dead zone inside the damper. On the road, it shows up as knocking and reduced stability. The reason? The damper has also lost oil. A vacuum forms inside the inner tube. Here it is, the shock absorber, fully disassembled. This is a twin tube shock absorber. This is the outer tube and this is the inner tube. The piston rod and the working piston look like this. And here we also have the solenoid responsible for the adjusting stiffness. When electrical current is applied, the solenoid changes the oil flow through the piston. And this is how the damping force is adjusted in real time. The piston moves inside the inner tube, while the volume between the two tubes acts as a compensation chamber, absorbing the displacement of the piston rod. Now, let's talk about the main failure points. The first and most common is the oil seal. In our case, this is the primary issue. Over time, it wears out and the shock absorber starts leaking oil. We use premium quality Italian seals. In this case, we are installing one that is identical to the original. It is an oil seal with spring and additional anti-dust lip. And this is very important. In the industry, there are about 12 different types of oil seals used in twin-top tube shock absorbers. And the choice is never random. These shock absorbers this is shock absorbers with coil spring, and the shock absorbers has almost no protection against dust and contamination. That's why the seal design is critical. Every single detail in these cars is the result of engineering, and something that may seem small, like the material and the design of the oil seal, it's actually extremely important. And this reflects our philosophy: no compromise. In our process, we often use an improved oil seal, this. But some clients prefer everything to remain absolutely original. For example, we had a client with Maserati Grand Cabrio who requested an original oil seal. And here it is, the original one. It's a brand new original replacement, same type, same dimension and same material. The second possible issue is the guide under the seal. Over the time it wears out and the internal bushing degrades. We only use high-end bushings such as SKF and INA, Schaeffler. The third common issue in twin-tube shock absorbers is the bottom valve. It can get stuck in the open position, which completely destroys the damping performance. At AirTec, this component is always fully serviced. Fourth, we inspect the working piston and the solenoid. In rare cases, the problem can be there. And we never leave anything unchecked. Now, let's take a look at the second faulty component, the lift system. Here it is, fully disassembled. This part also requires a very precise work. The lift system is essentially like a hydraulic jack, but it operates in much harsher conditions: water, dirt, debris. That's why the seals must be extremely durable and made from the correct materials. Otherwise, leaks will come again. Once we rebuild these systems as well, we will show you exactly how it works live on our test bench. We have also experience in motorsport, and we use a spring rate dyno. You may have noticed in the video that this Ferrari was sent to us with KW springs. So just to be sure, we are going to measure the spring rate. In many cases, the car is no longer with its first owner, and it's not always known if the springs have been changed in the past. That's why we measure everything, so the customers know exactly what they are getting. Now, let's see how the shock absorber performs after the repair. As you can see, we have a perfectly symmetrical graph. The damping force is consistent. We have no dead zones and no irregularities. This shock absorber is now working perfect. We tested in the maximum stiffness mode. Now we run a manual test. We're starting a manual test under maximum volt. And here you can see the damping force, both in compression and rebound. Now we change the current and you can immediately how the damper softens. We can make it stiffer or softer in real time. Finally, we will show you how the repaired lift system works. For this purpose, we have mounted the strut on our spring rate dyno and combined it with our hydraulic test bench. We slightly compress it to see what load the spring produced at this right height. For example, at this position, the strut is currently supporting about 262 kilograms of load. Now, if we load the vehicle or if we want to increase the ride height, we activate the lift system like this and immediately you can see what happens. This is the working principle of all lift systems, a change in pressure that directly affects load and ride height. But for us, this is not just a demonstration. This is where we test, fine-tune and verify every detail to ensure the system works flawlessly. We check for leaks for pressure stability. This is what a true repair of these shock absorbers looks like. If you found this video interesting, try to find something similar online. You will quickly realize there is almost nothing like this because we are the only ones showing this process in such detail. We are specialists in this field. We take pride in our work and in the solutions we provide. If you want the best for your vehicle, there is only one choice: AirTec. Thank you for watching and see you next time.